Hello there, ladies and gentlemen. This is Orphan Last, aka Skylar Madison, and I'm going to go ahead and draw some Galaxy's Edge fan art. Specifically, this you see a sketch on the screen right now, and it's an image that I drew in last week's video. It's just a sketch from the Sketchbook Sessions series. It's kind of a relief to me sometimes to just have a little video devoted towards me preparing for maybe possibly potential videos or the next video where I can really think out a composition a bit more. Now with this sketch, there were some things that I didn't like about it, but overnight I was thinking about what it was that I didn't like about it, and basically it all dealt with the trees. So the composition with the trees is different. The actual makeup of what kind of tree they are kind of evolved quite significantly. I actually watched the original Star Wars trilogy fairly recently, somewhat recently, and I remember pausing the screen when they were at Dagobah, when Luke Skywalker was at Dagobah learning how to use the Force from Yoda. And, I was wondering what makes Dagobah look like Dagobah. And I noticed that, there's a few trees here and there in the foreground. You can see all of the details, but, once it goes to being a couple of yards out, everything winds up becoming a silhouette, surrounded by a haze of mist. And so I kind of wanted to reflect that. So the only tree that has any sort of detail is the tree in the foreground. And one of the big story elements to the book Imperator, and that's the book that this is fan art of, is that there are mushrooms everywhere on the planet. And if I were to tell you the synopsis of the book Imperator, it would sound just like Luke Skywalker going down to Dagobah. And even though the synopsis is exactly the same, the context of what characters are there, why they're there, and such like that, and the telling of the story is completely different. It's not the same story. Even though it has the same synopsis, the same general ideas, it's not the same story at all. The execution is completely different. And genuinely, if this interests you at all, check it out. Galaxy's Edge is stinking cool anyhow. If you like Star Wars, you'll like this. You really will. The authors deliberately made this to be something that is very similar to Star Wars. But anyhow, the mushrooms. I'm pretty sure that there were mushrooms inside of the book that were so big that they were as big as the trees, and although I wanted to draw something like that, it just seemed like that is an image for another time, a composition that's not this composition, and so I didn't do that. But about 6 or 7 years ago, I went on a camp out, and I saw on these trees that there were these mushrooms growing on the side of the bark, and that, I actually grabbed like a paper towel and held my breath for as long as I could, and kind of pulled one of these mushrooms off. You don't want to be touching mushrooms with your bare skin. 90% of mushrooms are poisonous. It's not even worth messing with mushrooms most of the time. And you don't want to be breathing while messing around with a mushroom, just simply because there are spores that fly out, and those spores can be poisonous, or they can cause you to hallucinate and such like that. But I kind of dissected one of these mushrooms a bit, just kind of looking it over, and thought, that would be kind of cool to draw something like that, just after studying it. And then I threw the mushroom away and kind of ran a distance away and then started breathing, just to make sure that I didn't breathe in anything that was toxic. But yeah, anyhow, the idea is that the narrative of the story is that the main character, Goth Solus, he also goes by the name Casper. He's breathing in these spores from these mushrooms all the time. It's like the wind is constantly blowing all of these spores around, and so no matter what, he can't escape it, and so he's high the entire time, throughout the entire book. And I'm not talking about high like, hey man, remember when we went to that convenience store and we bought a whole pizza? Yeah man, that was totally righteous. I'm not talking about that kind of high. I'm talking about the type of high where you're hallucinating your worst nightmares. That sort of high. Not a happy, joyful experience. And yeah, and he's learning how to use Galaxy's Edge's equivalent to the Force. It's referred to as the Crux and such like that. And the entire time he's just miserably high the entire time. And so yeah, that I made sure towards the end I wound up putting in illustrating what could pass as like some magical looking spores in the air. Now, Casper himself, Goth Solus, his appearance, the way he looks, he's always come off inside of the book series throughout the majority of, I guess, his youth, whatever that means, because his life has been extended, kind of like Tyrus Rex, and where he can live for thousands of years. But throughout Casper's very long youth, I've always thought of him as looking kind of like Maze Hughes from A Full Metal Alchemist, because Casper, he has the appearance, he has the behavior of the guy who can play the game and play it well, play by the rules and all of that, and generally be well accepted. And so I thought that a Maze Hughes appearance for him, something that's inspired by that, would work perfectly for Goth Solus, for Casper. And the armor, you can see that I pulled up references of like the Mandalorian, and I also pulled up references of Tyrus Rex briefly. Like if you're paying attention to like every frame, you can see me popping onto like Google Images, and sometimes you'll see those images pop up on the screen. Now, inside of the narrative of the story in multiple books inside of Galaxy's Edge, they put an emphasis on the fact that Tyrus Rex's armor was kind of found in a location where, they don't know where it came from. They don't know what kind of technology constructed it. And yet it's like this phenomenal set of armor. And the Republic did everything that they could to try to reverse engineer and reconstruct another set of armor just like it, but they never were really all that capable of reproducing it. They were able to reproduce something that was very close, but not quite. And so basically, although I used Tyrus Rex's armor and the Mandalorian armor to some extent as a bit of a reference, since it's not actually Tyrus Rex's armor, I didn't feel obligated to fully 100% be loyal to it. And I decided, I could use some of my own creativity with the armor. And this actually felt liberating, where some of my previous images, where I'm doing fan art for Galaxy's Edge, kind of suffered because I was trying to be overly loyal to a painterly style and trying to reinterpret it into just line art and such like that from different angles. When I don't really necessarily think that some of these images that have been illustrated for Galaxy's Edge, I don't think that they were thought. I don't think that there's been a lot of thought as to how some of this stuff exists in 3 dimensions, and it just looks really cool from that one particular camera angle. Like that right there is something that I felt has stifled me a little bit. And although I love the design of Tyrus Rex's armor, I do think that it poses questions how that would actually look in 3-dimensional space. I would love to still see it in 3-dimensional space, but I just I just have difficulty trying to reinterpret it into line work and such like that. My workflow is so much different than Trent's. But anyhow, yeah, I think that the armor that I wound up settling with wound up looking excellent for Casper, and I guess for the Mark I set of armor that Casper tends to use. I don't necessarily think that this is the Goth Solus armor that he wound up having when basically he becomes pretty damn powerful in the galaxy. But yeah, it's still a damn good set of armor. Now the fingers, they're armored. However, I didn't want them to be like, say, C-3PO's fingers, where it always looked like the actor had difficulty gripping things, and it seemed like, you know, his fingers would have no traction, and so just about everything that he would grab would be just about as difficult to keep a hold of as a bar of soap. And so I didn't want that to be an issue. And so I put these little rubber ridges along each fingernail, or each finger in general, so that there would be friction between the fingers and the object that they're trying to hold and such like that. And I think that looks stinking cool, and I think it has a practical application, and it worked with the composition. I think it would work in a three-dimensional image. If this was 3D, I think it would work just fine. And yeah, I really like it. And here I'm applying the highlights, and with the highlights I did a level of cross hatching, not as strong as I did with the black, but still it still exists. And if you're somebody who struggles with doing line work, if you slow down this video and just watch what I'm doing, I think it might open up different ideas as to how you could do your line work. There are tutorials out there on line work, or at least there's books. I think those are the best ones to go for, but me thinking about providing an actual tutorial on it, it just doesn't seem like it would make too much sense. Now, I did use those 3D models that come with Clip Studio Paint as my sketch, since I spend just about as much time to pose the character as I would to actually draw a sketch. I figure there's no problem with just using the 3D model as my sketch. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that the sketching phase is finished. Like with the Irmu character, he's kind of like Yoda. You could see that I used, just briefly on the screen just a few seconds ago, I used both Yoda and the Gremlins as references for Irmu. Now, I gave him more of a pig sort of nose. Yoda's nose is more like a human's, it's just short and squat. And the ears, people may look at the creature and say, oh yeah, that looks exactly like Yoda. But Yoda's ears, if he was being viewed from this angle, it would actually be kind of unflattering, because his ears would be 100% foreshortened. His ears would be pointed directly at the camera. And whereas these ears, you're seeing more of a broad view of them. They're more like a bat's ears. They're angled backward towards the back of the head, and so there are distinct differences from Irmu to Yoda, and you know, the sketching phase. When I draw kind of the hoodie for Irmu, you can kind of see how I was loosely treating this as a sketch, and you know, how I was sketching on top of it. Yeah, I'm closer with each line towards the finished product when I use these 3D models, but that doesn't mean that my experimentation and finding everything is just finished now that I have the 3D model down there. So, you know, just keep that in mind. And by the time that I'm finished with this image, I just gotta say, this would be a really damn good cover for the Imperator book. I still have yet to draw another image that's in my mind. after having drawn this image. And more, I would love to draw more fan art for Galaxy's Edge. I have an image in my head of Casper, as well as his Deathbot and Irmu, all together, looking at just a giant mushroom the size of a tree. That would be stinking cool. It's still not an action-packed image with Galaxy's Edge characters in it, but still, it's still an image that I think would be provocative, and it would possibly, like, if it were a book cover, that would be stinking cool. That would be awesome. I think that it could sell books, but it's just kind of like a little daydream, I guess. Anyhow, yeah, so I'm thinking about actually doing just a friendly, fun art competition, I'm thinking. The final image here is going to be grayscale, and I was just thinking, if my audience is up for it, I'm planning on sharing this image for free, full resolution and everything, on my Discord server. And, if you guys would like to have 2 months worth of time to color it, if I guess the top 3 artists that color it, you could possibly have your version of the coloring work featured inside of one of my videos. I know my channel's not the biggest in the world and all that, but it is exposure. It's not a whole lot, but it's still exposure. If you guys are up for that, if you guys want to, I just love seeing your guys' artwork. I guess I could run a poll. There's a poll going on right now in the upper right corner of the screen right now. Would you like to color this image and have a art competition, have your artwork featured on one of my videos of you coloring this? I don't know. Let me know. Vote in the poll in the upper right corner of the screen, and let me know. Anyhow, so here you can see me kind of finishing up with Irmu and just kind of getting all of the shadows just right, and everything's just kind of wrapping up towards the end. I tried out using a previous render of the Galaxy's Edge logo, and so that didn't really work out, and so I had to kind of reconstruct it a little bit. And even this reconstruction didn't work. I actually had to use the magic wand tool on the Galaxy's Edge text, and then just use the fill the fill tool to color it in on a completely different layer in order to get the Galaxy's Edge text in there. And I decided to use the text as part of the composition, and yeah, you can see that I went ahead and added that kind of lighting in the scene a little bit more too. And here's the final image. I think it came out looking really stinking good. I love the layer of detail that I was able to put into the characters, and I love how I was able to kind of simplify the background, mainly with silhouettes. It's so much easier to draw a silhouette than it is to draw out every single detail on something. I really like this piece. I think it really illustrates at least some of the experience of the Imperator book. And so, yeah, once again, I'm going to be sharing this image for free, full resolution on my Discord server. A link to my Discord server is in the video description below. Anyways, guys, that pretty much concludes it for this video. If you guys enjoyed it, please feel free to like, share, and subscribe. And if you guys would like to support this channel, there's an image of a t-shirt in the upper right corner of the screen right now. It leads to my Teespring. Any support with the purchase of a t-shirt would be much appreciated. And if you guys have enjoyed this content and would like to see more, feel free to click on anything else that's appearing on the screen right now. Thank you very much for your time.